Writers. We'll be looking at Revival today from 1744 to 1758. This is what Richard Heitzenreiter, the great Duke historian of Methodism, has labeled the consolidation period of the revival. And you can see here that from 1744 onward, the circuits, the societies and the small classes are linked together into what is called circuits. And in the conference minutes, beginning in 1744, we have the first annual conference, and by 1746 we begin to see the names of organized circuits where John and Charles are able to link together the class meetings, usually started by the laity that we mentioned. Some of these names we've already shown here in the map, but the lay preachers who would often start small classes based on local revival begin meeting, and then John and Charles would take these scattered classes and link them into societies, and from 1746 onward into circuits. These large dots are the first mentioned circuits with appointments attached to them, the names of preachers. You can see again the Newcastle, Bristol, and London circuit, but Wales has already received the organization of John and Charles in this consolidation period, 1746. Here out of Yorkshire, you see various small tentacles of connectionalism beginning to reach into the areas of Yorkshire, and then even in the Cornwall circuit as well. If we look at the rather steady membership of this period, particularly look at the circuits meeting from 1746 through 1758 in our consolidation period, you really don't see large numbers of circuits at that point. It's really in what Heitzenreiter calls the maturing of Methodism. 1758 onward, you begin to see steady increases in the number of circuits, and then a commensurate increase in total British membership there. It's interesting to note that it was not John Wesley's goal to quickly and rashly extend these circuits throughout Great Britain. You can see from the circuits here in Bristol and London, and even in the Yorkshire area, these tentacles begin to stretch out. But Wesley had a desire and a design to prevent undue opposition, which he was already beginning to experience, some of it most violent in terms of mobs, yelling and bell ringing and playing organs in the church, and disturbing preaching in the city squares and in the fields. So Wesley's design was not to spread the movement like wildfire, but to steadily create linkages and connectionalism in the circuits, and even against the stereotype, leaning against excessive field preaching, but trying to preach indoors if possible. In fact, he was quoted in the minutes during this period: "To avoid giving needless offense, we never preach without doors when we can with any conveniency preach within doors." His plan was to, quote, according to the minutes, go a little and a little from the established societies, in particularly to reach out a little bit from the centers of gravity here. These sub-circuits or rounds begin like little fingers to reach out, to consolidate this triangle, this center of gravity, as well as southward. And so you can see steady increase in membership and in circuits, not this wildfire mentality. His idea was to go a little bit further and not to reach too far widely into the countryside beyond the established societies. Quote, according to the larger minutes, so a little leaven would spread with more effect and less noise, and help would always be at hand. In other words, help within the circuits for any new initiatives. So in this consolidation period, we see John Wesley beginning really from 1744, laying down the ideas in annual conference and the design of the connectional system, and in training lay preachers, assistants who were the heads of the circuits, whom we called assistants, and then the assistants would have helpers who preached in societies, classes, etc. Wesley's name for his itinerant preachers were thus preachers or helpers, and of course his assistant was what we would call a circuit, a district superintendent perhaps, or a superintendent today. So the structure of the movement is set in place from 1744, the training of preachers and the spread of classes and linking circuits and societies throughout England, Ireland, and Scotland proceeds. So from the first annual conference in 1744, important benchmarks in Wesleyan doctrine and discipline are being laid down. Debates with the Quietist Moravians, who felt that you had to wait on this ideal form of assurance before you could engage in personal and social transformation, and dogmatic debates with George Whitefield and the Calvinists over predestination, all shape annual conference discussions during the period. And the Wesleyan message of free but resistible grace, universal grace, and responsible grace, the ability to respond and to reject the grace of God. This message is shaped in conference and is embodied in the various preaching models that he gives to his preachers. We have records from 1744 of the large minutes, the minutes of conference, in which Wesley's mission develops. The first mission statement, gathered together in the 1745 large minutes, what to teach, how to teach, and what to do. The large minutes were gathered on these topics. The question, what may we reasonably believe to be God's design in raising up the preachers called Methodists? Answer, to reform the nation and in particular the church, to spread scriptural holiness over the land. And so these large minutes form the discipline, come together as the discipline. Wesley teaches his preachers, it says here in German, you simply cannot preach what comes straight into your mind, and the preachers say, we will study regularly your teaching sermons. And he begins to gather his sermons together in published form to pass on and to train his preachers to go into the circuits without creating doctrinal and social noise, if you will. We have from 1747, the large minutes, some of Wesley's advice to preachers, which I think today still holds as wisdom for preachers. These are missional, attitudinal advice and really taking the force of law, or at least ecclesial law, according to Wesley. If his preachers did not keep to these rules, then they were often asked to discontinue. So these are some of the rules of Wesley passed on to his preachers in the consolidation period. First, be diligent, never be unemployed, never be triflingly employed. Never while away your time nor spend more time at any place than is strictly necessary. Of course, this would help as they were spreading throughout the land there. Be serious. Let your motto be holiness to the Lord. Avoid all lightness, jesting, and foolish talking. Converse sparingly and cautiously with women, particularly with young women. This surely harkened back to Wesley's experience with Sophia Hawkey in Savannah. Take no steps towards marriage without solemn prayer to God and consulting with your brethren. Believe evil of no one unless fully proved. Take heed how you credit it. Put the best construction you can on everything. You know the judge is always supposed to be on the prisoner's side. So be not too quick to judge. 6. Speak evil of no one. Keep your thoughts within your own breast till you come to the person concerned. These are more pastoral attitudes that would nurture classes and society. And he gives copious amounts of rules for the actual discharge of preaching as well. Tell every person you meet what you think wrong in him as soon as may be, lovingly and plainly, else it will fester in your own heart. Again, pastoral care advice. 8. In the pulpit, do not affect the gentleman. A preacher of the gospel is the servant of all. 9. Be ashamed of nothing but sin. No, not even the cleaning of your own shoes if necessary. 10. Be punctual. Do everything exactly at the time advertised. And keep to our rules. Do not mend them for conscience sake. And you have nothing to do but to save souls. Therefore spend and be spent in this work, and go always, not only to those who want you, but to those who want you most. And so the preachers were told in the pulpit, and these ideas helped bring Wesley's preachers in the circuit, the assistants who oversaw the circuit, and the helpers on the circuits helped to grow into Ireland from the 1747 period, in Northern Ireland in 1760s, and growth beginning in resistant Scotland, Scotland being resistant to the Wesleyan Arminian message because of the Church of Scotland's strong Reformed theology, predestination. John goes to Edinburgh in 1751, but it's really not until the 1760s that work spreads haltingly, really, ultimately in Ireland, in Scotland. Even at his death, you can see there were only 1,000 members. So the rules for preaching led to success. You can see here, again, during the consolidation period, the number of circuits beginning, and the rules for preaching. I'd like to reiterate a few of these in closing as we look at this consolidation period. Be sure to begin and end your sermon precisely at the time appointed. Always good advice for preachers today. Sing no hymns of your own composing. In other words, use Charles's hymns if possible. Endeavor to be serious, weighty, and solemn in your whole deportment before the congregation.